We got a certified genius in the room today, Aaron Stroman, and I'm as eager to hear, I think, as everybody else is. So, anything else we need to cover, Aaron, before you take it away?
I'm not a certified genius. I'm a certified facilitator. Big difference
Oh,
between the two. Now, with that, let's jump into it. The six types of working genius is based on this model that there are six parts of how work gets done. And so I'm going to go through these and then we'll talk about how the model applies to individuals and how it applies to teams. So we're going to start off with wonder. The genius of wonder asks the question, why are things the way they are? A lot of times these people have their heads up in the clouds and they're just questioning or maybe even challenging the status quo. The next genius is the genius of invention. And as the name describes, the inventors come up with new ideas, solutions, or even products to solve problems. So the wanderer kind of questioning things, inventor comes up with solutions. Then we have the genius of discernment. Discernment is the intuition to tell the workability of that invention the inventor invented. They have a gut feeling. They're able to tell if something is a good solution or bad solution, maybe not even based on uh, technicality or expertise, but it's very an intuitive genius. There's also the genius of galvanizing, and I wish I had more galvanizing in my own genius. But the galvanizer is good at rallying the troops and getting people to take action and to move forward on a project or on a solution. Then we have the gift of enablement. And this word enablement can be kind of tricky because a lot of times we think of the psychological term enablement, like parents don't enable your children. But if we think of it through productivity, enablement is a person who says, I'm ready to come by and help out however you want. So think of that productivity enablement, people who are waiting to be handed the baton and they're just going to run with it and start getting the work done. And then we have tenacity. These are the people who like to finish the projects. They like to check off the last check marks on the checklist, bring things to completion, close the deal, finish it up. And so you'll see that as this flow of work gets done, the order in which work gets done is really important. And as individuals, we tend to have two of those parts that are we call our working genius. There's areas where we have natural giftings and strengths. These are when we're working in our geniuses, people say things like, I don't even feel like I'm working. I love my job so much, it doesn't even feel like work. Then I'm going to jump down to the working frustrations. We tend to have two areas of work where we get really frustrated. We hate this type of work. We tend to skip those steps or procrastinate a lot. We don't like those. And I saved the working competency. A lot of times we may have developed skills to be competent at some of these parts of work, but they don't fill our tank. And the competency is really dangerous because if we hang out in competencies too much, we'll end up experiencing burnout. So there's an assessment that comes along with Working Genius, and you can take this assessment and you'll discover where your geniuses are, where your competencies are, and where your frustrations are. We have a few people on the call who went through the assessment. I'm going to be sharing that with the entire group. They're going to be live on the call. I'm also going to do a giveaway if you're interested in taking this assessment. At the end of the webinar, I'm doing a free giveaway, and not just the assessment, but a 1 hour leader debrief with that as well. So if you're interested, hang on. Also in the Working Genius model, we can see that there are 3 stages of work. So the first stage is ideation. This is wonder and invention. People are coming up with problems and also coming up with solutions, coming up with ideas, inventing new ways of doing the work. That's what we call ideation. In the middle, discernment and galvanizing, that's activation. So this is where we're starting to activate the team. And then enablement and tenacity is implementation. Again, it's good to be able to identify what stage of work we're at in a project, or sometimes there's meeting implications. Is this a meeting for ideation or activation or implementation? And if we get those wrong, it can lead to a lot of frustration, which we'll see in a few moments. But also in the model, we have a responsive genius and disruptive genius. The wonder, discernment, and enablement are all responsive by nature. So wonder, they're just kind of responding to the environment around them. Discernment, they're responding, they're discerning the ideas and products that the inventor is creating. And enablement is responding to the call of the galvanizer. Now, if we take a look at the disruptive geniuses, the invention disrupts the wonder. The wonder is kind of questioning status quo. The inventor's immediately coming up with a solution. The discerners, weighing the workability of a solution. The galvanizers interrupting them and starting to rally the team together. Enablement is working on the project. Tenacity is going to interrupt them and say, hey, we've been on this project long enough. We got to bring it to a close. A lot of times it's easy to cast judgment on the responsive or disruptive geniuses. Sometimes we can chalk up responsive geniuses as not taking initiative because they're responding. It's like, man, why doesn't that enablement person ever just start working? Man, they're happy to respond to the call to work, but they may not be taking initiative. And it'd be easy for us to confuse the responsiveness for maybe laziness. Or same thing with disruptive. If we have a disruptive genius, they could come across a little abrasive. Why are they always trying to interrupt the workflow? Whereas that's just how some work gets done. At some point, someone's got to get the ball rolling. And when we understand, oh, they're just living in their genius. It's not a personality thing. They're not attacking me or trying to interrupt me. It's the disruptive part of work. It helps us understand each other better and brings a lot of cohesion to the team. And then, I talked about guilt and judgment. It's another benefit of this model is, for me, my geniuses are the wonder and discernment. I'm not an enablement genius. And I always felt guilty delegating stuff to the enablement team because I had this feeling of guilt, like, man, I shouldn't be asking someone else to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. We've all heard that, but at some point in leadership, you have to be able to delegate. So if, raise your hand if you've ever struggled with maybe delegating, or maybe invention isn't your genius. You think, I can never come up with ideas. I'm not sure I'm really useful. It's easy to experience this guilt or to judge others. But when we look through the lens of the 6 types of working genius, it helps us understand, okay, we don't need to feel guilty. We don't need to judge others. We just need to understand their working genius. So I want to give a little bit of a story to illustrate how the model of the working genius works based on altitudes. So Peter's on the call. Imagine Peter has a private jet and he picks all of us up in his private jet to take a little joyride through the clouds. And as we're flying through the clouds, the wonder genius goes, hey, this is a fun airplane ride, but I wonder, should we take a break and get some lunch? We can go anywhere in the nation because we're flying around. Let's get some food. That's a great question to ask. Great wonder to wonder. The inventor comes along, a little lower in altitude, 25,000 feet, and says, I know there's a great restaurant in Breckenridge, Colorado. What if we go there? The discernment genius pipes up and goes, you know what? I just feel like that's not the best idea. We're in April. I was looking at the weather. I think there's a blizzard in Breckenridge. We dig into it. Sure enough, the airport's closed. We can't land in Breckenridge. Goes back up to the inventor. The inventor goes, I've heard Texas has great barbecue. Let's go to Texas and get some barbecue. Discernment comes in and says, that's a wonderful idea. There's no snow in Texas right now. We can land there. The galvanizer jumps up and says, okay, everybody, I need someone to book a reservation at Texas Barbecue Restaurant. I need someone to get us an Uber from the airport to the restaurant. I need someone to get a hold of the airport and make sure we have authorization to land. Let's get going. The enablement team steps up and says, okay, I got the Uber. Okay, I got the reservation. Okay, I'm calling the airport, and they get to work, and they're enabling, they're making arrangements for all this. And then what's tenacity? Tenacity is the airplane pilot who's, hey, buckle up your seatbelts, put those tray tables up. We're bringing this plane down to land. So that's the illustration of the altitude of geniuses. Now, just imagine, I know everyone on the call is going to have a hard time imagining this, but just imagine if we're in a meeting and the wanderer is like, hey, what if we got lunch somewhere? What if immediately the pilot starts dropping down in altitude 5,000 feet? That's a little bit of a motion sickness, right? That's turbulence. And then what if the inventor's like, wait, we haven't decided where we're going. We're going to go to Breckenridge, but we're over Nebraska. Boom, the pilot has to pull it back up to 25,000 feet. And what if the enablement team starts, at 10,000 feet, starts making reservations at Breckenridge? So now we're dropping down to 10,000 feet. But discernment says, wait, hold on. We can't go there. The airport's closed. We're coming back up. And what if the galvanizer says, okay, well, I'll start delegating some responsibilities and enabling the team, but we still haven't figured out where we're going. So that's meeting turbulence. And a lot of times in organizations, there may be some people talking about ideas that we haven't made full decisions on or commitments to, but people start working on it. And then we have to, someone comes and says, hey, I know we're working on the project, but we got to stop that and come up with a new project we're going to get started on. So there's this altitude sickness that comes if we're not going through the process of work the appropriate way. So that's
Aaron, you're making me airsick just listening to this.
Yeah. So as you can see, if we're not aware of our geniuses for ourselves and for the entire team, a lot of times we experience this, and I'm sure you've experienced things like that in your own organization. So the question is, what do we do about it? And so there's all-in-one model. I'm going to introduce you to a couple people that have taken the assessment, and we're going to take a look at their geniuses, maybe even glance at their frustrations and competencies, and see if we can apply some of the wisdom of the 6 types of working genius to help improve our efficiency at work. And the applications can be huge. I already talked about meetings, how we work through projects. I've taken entire boards through this, so we see maybe where a breakdown is or a bottleneck is. One of the greatest benefits, I think, is employee retention. If we take a look at the average cost of replacing an employee, did you know that it can be up to starting at 50% up to 200% of that departing employee's annual salary is the range of what it costs to replace an employee. And a lot of times employees leave because they're in their working frustration instead of being in their working genius. And so employee job satisfaction, employee retention is a great benefit of taking your team through the 6 type of working genius. I'm going to ask Peter to take himself off of mute. Peter, tell us where you are, what organization you're with real quick before we jump into your.
Sure. I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I run a pregnancy care center, and I'm the president.
Okay, president. Okay. Oh boy.
So hiring and firing, you're speaking my language. Yikes.
Okay. Well, hopefully this will help. So you took the assessment. You haven't seen these until just now. So I'll kind of work through these real quick, but your working genius is invention and enablement. So invention and enablement is showing down here. Your working competency is tenacity and wonder, and your frustration is discernment and galvanizing. Now, it'll be important for everyone on the call to know that these aren't a rating of skills, they're a ranking of how you're wired. So you can have competencies that you're really good at. In fact, you can even be good at your frustrations, but this type of work just might be draining instead of life-giving. So important little detail there as we jump in these. So when you take the assessment, you're going to get a screen like this that gives a pretty big deep dive or kind of magnified look at your working genius. So you have invention and enablement. And here it's going to give us a breakdown. What is invention? It's about coming up with novel ideas and solutions to solve problems, address issues. Invention involves creativity and original thinking, often with little direction. People with this genius are confident and inspired by a problem that has no apparent solution. They derive energy and joy from getting the opportunity to take a first crack at coming up with a new idea. The benefits of this genius are generally well understood in society and include anything related to innovation, novel thinking, and original problem solving. Peter, what's your initial reaction as I read through that?
Not sure it all fits, but some of it definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we also have enablement. I'll read through this too. And yeah, pay attention and see if any of this sounds like you or if it doesn't at all. But the genius of enablement involves answering the call to action and seamlessly providing others with the unconditional support and assistance they need. People with this genius get energy and joy from providing others with the support they need to get something started and by providing the human glue required to hold it together. Even though people with enablement are often ideal team members, they sometimes discount the importance of their genius, mistakenly believing that they are simply amenable or nice. The benefits of this genius include higher morale and greater interpersonal appreciation and support.
Got off the telephone.
How does that sit with you, Peter?
That sounds quite like me.
Okay.
And the word amenable or nice, my wife says I'm kind and sometimes too kind.
Too kind, yes.
Because
okay.
I'm working, I go, I'm very patient with training and sometimes it's just nail biting, but I enjoy working with people that way.
Okay.
So that fits me quite well.
All right. Well, I'm gonna kind of go to this next slide, and as you can imagine, if everyone has two geniuses, there's I think around 15 different combinations that we can get for our unique pairing, and the inventor enablement combination or pairing, we call that the adaptable designer. And so, as you can, you have different strengths and you're bringing different geniuses to the table. And it's here's a little kind of unique description of what that adaptable designer can look like. And you're also going to see there's two things that we highlight that the adaptable designer craves and the two things that they're crushed by. Again, I'll read through these and just give me your feedback. So typically, the adaptable designer craves freedom to create an event without constraints or restrictions. Does that sound like you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, inventors typically like to think outside the box. They also crave appreciation. They want to be acknowledged for their inherent value, but they are not necessarily seeking recognition, attention, or credit. They put a quote in here that made a big difference. You really helped.
Yep. That fits.
Okay, that fits. And then the crush there, is constraint. They dislike restrictive parameters being forced to stay inside the box.
Yeah.
And then got to chuckle out of that one. Yeah, did that hit a nerve or?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
I can stay inside the box, but that's not where I want to live.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and what's interesting with your pairing is a lot of time, if someone has enablement as a genius, they like the box. A lot of times enablement genius says, tell me exactly what to do and I'll do it. And that's almost opposite of the inventor that's like, hey, I want to make something out of nothing and I'd be really creative. So it's kind of a unique pairing that you have here.
I would call it a hybrid because it
Yeah.
brings two different things together. And I guess my box wouldn't be a rectangle, it would be malleable.
Yeah, interesting.
So I could stay inside the lines some, but I don't want to, if it's restrictive, I don't want to live there.
Yeah. Well, now I think of it, the inventor might actually be defining where those boundaries of the box exist.
Yeah. That's a good point.
It's a powerful combination that you have there. The adaptable designer also is crushed by being overlooked. They dislike it when their efforts are taken for granted, when you don't acknowledge that they have helped, or if you ignore the impact of their work.
Yeah, that fits too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we don't have the entire team on the call today, but your frustrations were up here with discernment and galvanizing in that activation zone.
Mm-hmm.
And just based on the model, it might be anticipated that you come up with an idea and you immediately start working on it without getting the entire team bought in and equipped to move forward. Has that ever happened?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I would,
not so much anymore because I've been doing this for 24 years, but
okay.
Yeah, I think I've learned to keep that a little bit under control. But yeah, that's a natural tendency.
That's good self-awareness to be able to look at that and go, okay, you probably need to bring some people around you to bounce ideas off of before you pull the trigger, and then have someone help rally the team and sell it. And
yes.
Okay, good self-awareness. I'll go this next slide. This is I circled your geniuses in green, your competencies in the yellow, and your frustrations in red. And then you'll see there's a decision line right in between discernment and galvanizing. So as we're brainstorming, coming up with new ideas and discerning if those ideas are worth moving forward on, eventually a decision has to be made. And that decision should be made in between discernment and galvanizing. If we skip that, that's where we get some of that turbulence I was talking about earlier.
Sure.
So this is just a little, and I talked to Peter earlier on the call. He's going to get a copy of all this stuff, but this is sometimes I like the visual to look at, okay, where do we need to be paying attention to and delegating versus where do we need to be owning and working in our genius. And there's a cool, there's a community of other working genius facilitators that I'm a part of. And this guy made some superhero cards of everyone's unique pairing. And so Peter, this is kind of a little bonus for you, but this is what your superhero genius looks like. Flexar, enablement and invention. So if you're ever in your genius and some people are giving you a hard time, picking on you, you just remind them that, pull out your card and say, hey, I'm just working in my genius.
Yep. I will need that.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy of that.
That's great.
So I'm gonna pause. I have someone else on the call who we're gonna go through her working genius, but let's just pause and do a little Q&A right now. I've been talking a lot, but I want to let everyone drop a question in the chat box. Any questions, observations, that you have thus far about the working genius model. I'll shut down the PowerPoint and get to my chat box. Feel free to ask a question in the chat, or if you want to take yourself off of mute, you can do that as well.
So I've got a question, Aaron. I mean, is this the way that somebody usually gets their results, is in a group setting?
Oh, yeah, good question. So ideally, what I'll do is I'll typically, like a leader. So Peter's a president. I'll usually do a debrief with him one-on-one. And then if he decides to take his entire team through, if the team has capacity to do those one-on-one, we do, but there's some great power in taking the team through a team map. And what we'll do is we'll map out everyone's geniuses and frustrations. And from an organizational level, we get to look at that and a lot of times identify some of those bottlenecks or pain points. So we'll do both. Typically it's one-on-one, not in front of a group of strangers on Zoom for the World Wide Web to observe. But yeah, I promised Peter and Amy that I'd be gentle. All right, I don't have any other questions in the Q&A box, so I'm going to share my screen again. And let's see, did I do that right? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, Amy, you take yourself off of mute. Why don't you tell everyone where you are, who you're working for, if you volunteer with any organizations, and then we'll jump into your working genius.
Yeah. So I'm Amy. I'm from Texas, Dallas area. Professionally, I work with a jiu-jitsu affiliation and more of an admin process development capacity. And then volunteer-wise, I plan events for We Defy Foundation, which is a jiu-jitsu organization for disabled combat veterans.
Glad to have you on the call. And you took your assessment. And similar to Peter, you both have enablement as a genius. And in addition to your enablement, you have discernment as a genius. Looks like invention and tenacity are working competencies, and the working frustration is galvanizing and wonder. So your pairing is a little different, but let's take a look at your all-in-one model. So if you notice, when we looked at Peter's, he had invention over here and enablement, which was a responsive and a disruptive genius. Amy, you have double responsive here. Double responsive. So you're going to be on the responsive side of things. Sometimes people are double disruptive, or sometimes they have one and one. Circled your frustrations up here in ideation with wonder and galvanizing. You have competencies here of invention and tenacity. And I marked the decision line there for us. Amy, I want to put you on the spot. Just as you look at this one page, what stands out to you, or what observations are you making just off the bat?
I think what makes a lot of sense to me and kind of lands as very accurate is the frustrations with the wonder and galvanizing. Like I'll find myself, I don't want to, or I don't know that I do a great job at like figuring out what the problem is. But if someone else brings me a problem, I will solve it. Like that part is the part that feels really natural to me. But like looking at the 30,000 foot level has never been a strength. So that makes a lot of sense for me. And then galvanizing as well. I have a tendency to just want people to do things, and like I forget that it takes a certain type of person to really like rally the troops in. I'm not that guy. Like that is, we have great people in our organization who do, but then like just recognizing that that's a need for partnership, not seeing it as just a weakness. That's what stands out to me.
When do you feel like you're pulling teeth when you try to get a group of people to take action?
Yes.
So me too, by the way. Galvanizing is it's competency or frustration. We have a guy on the call who you met this past weekend, Jeremy Brick. Galvanizing is his genius. And what's interesting, because I've been around Jeremy a bit, he galvanizes without even trying to or meaning to. He's this guy that if we're training, he'll say, "Hey, why don't we all go to lunch?" And next thing you know, there's a group of people gathered up for lunch, and it's like, how did that happen? And he probably is galvanized, doesn't even realize it. So if we look at your unique pairing, the discernment enablement pairing is called the insightful collaborator. If you were to be labeled an insightful collaborator, would that offend you or would that make you feel proud?
No, that feels good.
Okay. So I'm going to go through and just read this paragraph here. And similar thing is what I asked Peter to do. Just as you listen to this and maybe follow along with me, I'll ask you for your initial feedback and how does that make you feel? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? But people with this pairing derive real joy and energy from providing others with astute and empathetic assistance based on their intuition and instinct. They are quintessential team players, bringing together exceptional, timely, and shrewd counsel in a selfless manner. They sometimes hesitate to push people to heed their advice and can be differential to others when they sense resistance. These tendencies can often leave them feeling underappreciated. What's your initial response to that description?
I mean, I can literally think through situations like in the last year where this is exactly very, very, that hits home. Yes.
Okay. So one of the things you're going to crave is trust. That's coming from the discernment genius. Discerners want you to trust their judgment, instincts, and assessment of things. You feel you appreciate or crave trust?
Yeah, I think I've said multiple times in general, like I don't know why I know, I just know.
Oh, yeah.
I've just learned that is, I don't have to have all the facts. I just have to trust my gut at some point, and it's steered me very well.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, that's that intuition from the discernment.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, appreciation down there is from the enablement. We went over that with Peter, but just being able to receive, like, hey, man, you made a big difference. You really helped out, but not necessarily being in a spotlight, standing ovation, but the appreciation. And then crushed by, so the discerners are crushed by the prove it mentality. They dislike having to argue for people to believe what their gut is telling them. And I think you described that pretty well. Okay. So that's your unique pairing. You ready for your superhero card,
Yes.
Amy? Okay. Pathfinder. That's the discernment and enablement superhero. So I'll send you this as well. So you can, if you want to print out and sign autographs for people who want to collect the genius.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, look at that quote though. I mean, what that just really describes what Amy just said about herself, guided by insight, led by intuition.
Yeah.
Do you have the mask, Amy?
Oh, yes. Right next to me.
All right. So I'm gonna take the screen share off. So with just for the entire audience, I told Amy and Peter I'll do a 60-minute debrief with them because we're just scratching the surface. We got 47 minutes, so we'll take a quick look at this, but I'll continue to put up there any questions. Feel free to drop those in the chat. Any comments, we'll open that up to discussion. But Amy and Peter, I'll put you guys both on the spot again. Do you see any applications as we just start to take a look at this that maybe you could take back to the workplace?
What stood out to me was the competency and tenacity. For my professional job, I noticed that I I can do it. I can get the job done and take it all the way through to completion, but that is not something that feels great for me. It's something that tends to drain energy. Whereas I have a partner that I work with who that I would suspect is absolutely her genius. She
Mm.
doesn't want to identify, she just wants to be told what to do. And then she does a great job of doing it. So remembering that I can delegate in that way and that it's not, like you said, it's not a bad thing to delegate that. It actually helps both of us. So
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not as eloquent as Amy, and I don't have a situation to explain, but yes, I can see application. Um, I'll have to wonder about it for a while.
There you go. So
That's
I'll
great.
share. For those who don't know, I was in youth ministry for 17 years. And of course, being a part of family ministry, there's this big event churches do during the summer called VBS. And it's absolute bonkers. There's, hundreds of little kids running around and, parents are wanting a break because they aren't in school. So it's like, how can I get rid of these kids? So they bring their kids to the church and my geniuses are wonder and discernment. So those are way up there at 30,000 and 20,000 feet. And I remember 2 weeks before we were doing our VBS, the entire family ministry team got together and we were doing a meeting that should have been classified as implementation. It was really an enablement and tenacity meeting. And so we're talking, okay, do we have all our volunteers in place? We have our reservations. The bounce houses are going to show up on Friday for the big, grand finale. And okay, does the production team, and, they have their skits and songs already. And they're trying to wrap things up, tie up all the loose ends, which is appropriate. Me in my genius, my oblivious genius was like, hey, it'd be awesome for that last day. What if we got a hot air balloon? I know they can tether those things and do little 30-foot trips up. And so I'm bringing in new ideas. That was not the appropriate meeting for me to be doing that. But I wasn't trying to be disruptive, but I was just thinking out loud, that's how my genius views things. And now looking back at this, I didn't have the model back then, but now knowing my working genius, I need to take that wonder hat off. And I probably shouldn't have even been at that meeting. Maybe a galvanizer should have been at that meeting. He just comes back and just tells me what to do. But that was an application I look at in my past going, I wish I would have had this back then because I
Yeah.
could have. I was probably frustrating people by wondering about things when I just need to take that wonder hat and throw it in the trash for 30 minutes during the meeting and be a silent observant on the wall. So there's lots of applications. We're going to talk about some things coming up. And Kent, I'm going to hand the mic over to you. What are you going to be doing later this month?
I get the mic. So later this month, actually end of the month, it's on the screen there, the Outcomes Conference in Dallas, Texas, so close to you, Amy. The theme this year is Seek First. Actually, the session that Aaron and I are doing, it starts with the words, please don't. How boardroom interference limits campaign success. And I don't know if you've experienced that, but we want the board and members of the board to contribute to the success of the campaign. Lots of times, man, Aaron makes me wish that that we had everybody aware of their own working geniuses, because sometimes I think we got somebody who wants a hot air balloon it's the right idea at the wrong time. So anyhow, really looking forward to this, equipping other leaders to be impactful in their leadership, particularly as it relates to fundraising.
All right.
And speaking of that, if you really want to put your fundraising on steroids, actually next week we've got a summit for the Asking Academy, and you can see on the screen there, when you talk about steroids, the Asking Academy, we don't just talk about theories, but we equip real people for real success. I was asking Erin about her on the screen. I don't know if she's going to be there. If she does, you might not recognize her initially. But if there's room in your budget this year for more dollars, then let's talk about the Asking Academy. Actually, we've got another, uh, the next cycle is one on the screen right now, and that is it will summit in the middle of June. And so we equip professionals and volunteers to bring real success to the fundraising of their organizations. Um,
And next month, I'm going to highlight we have the 3 keys to fundraising success with Kent Stroman, author of Asking About Asking. And this will give you a little taste of maybe the flavor of the Asking Academy. We utilize a lot of the framework in the book, Asking About Asking, for the Asking Academy. But same thing. If you have room in your budget for more revenue, you probably want to attend this webinar. Not only fantastic for nonprofit staff and development teams, but also board members. Board members can play a powerful role when it comes to
yeah.
fundraising. Okay.
Hey, Aaron,
Yes.
can I say one thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Who is
I know
this?
you're
First
running
of all,
short on time. So those of you that don't know, Aaron came and did probably don't know, he came and did a working genius model with my leadership team. I think there was 16, 18 people in there, 15. And the great thing about it for our leadership staff is it gave us really clear words to use now when people are being disruptive, or people are putting their innovator hat on, or when people are putting, and we can use the words that were frustrating other people without irritating them now. So nothing really surprised anybody on the working genius, but it really put it in a understanding of saying, yeah, okay, I can see that's just not part of that person's core competency. So why am I getting frustrating? They're not coming up with new ideas when they just want to be told what to do. So if you haven't taken it or you haven't put your team through it, it's well worth the money spent to have Aaron come in and do it and work with your team for a couple hours. The synergy and the efficiency you'll get will be, you'll just see it right away. So,
well, thank you for that. That was unsolicited promo. So I didn't pay Jeremy to say that. Usually I do have to pay Jeremy to say nice things about me, but he did that one on his own. But okay, so speaking of which, that was actually a perfect segue. I was going to do this a little bit later, but we do want to give away a working genius assessment. So if you haven't taken the assessment, I'll give you not only the assessment, but also a 60-minute leader debrief. So type in your name and email if you would like a chance to win a free working genius assessment.
Did you say you're going to give that, Aaron?
Yeah. We're doing a little
Wow.
giveaway, little generosity expression today. And if you think my boss really needs to do this, hey, put in their name and email. I'll give them one. We'll keep
So everybody gets this?
everyone. Well, no, I'm giving away one.
Oh,
Giving away one, not to everyone, but you have to enter to get a chance to win it. And clearly, Amy, Jeremy, and Peter have already taken it, so they don't need to. As that's open, let's take a look at the grand finale. So we wanted to end with a big bang, and of course, giving away the working genius assessment is a pretty big one. I'm gonna share a story. Actually, the guy who was speaking earlier, Jeremy Brick, leading pretty big operation. He's president of a U-Haul distribution facility. Jeremy, how many semi truckloads are you shipping out on a daily basis on average? He's on mute. Okay. He might come back. Anyways, I think it's around 15. He gave me a tour of the operation. Great leadership team and really good leadership. But I think out of his entire team, there was only one person who had the genius of galvanizing, and it was Jeremy. And I love this because about a week after we did the team mapping, he called me and said, "Hey, I had a person, one of my department leads say, basically, I need to galvanize my team. Give me some advice on how to do this, because it's not my genius and it is yours." And again, having that framework, having the language around there, being able to identify a competency or frustration and see someone else's genius in there, just the perfect application for integrating other team members to utilize their genius and give them a chance to shine, where otherwise they necessarily wouldn't have had that opportunity. So Jeremy, you gave me a little shout out. This is a shout out to you and your team. So thank you for that. And as I look at the time, it is 10:47. So with that, we're going to say a big thank you